When I was first starting out as a writer, I wanted my stories to have great thematic resonance. I wanted to write stories that express something universal, transcendent, undeniable, and insightful enough to cut to the bone of the human condition. The writers I admired were a glittering night sky of luminaries and visionaries, all deemed literary by those elitist of tastemakers, and man, did I want to join that constellation. I wrote many of my early stories with theme front and center, often at the expense of plot, character, and action. And I think if I had provided my readers with a secret decoder ring, they would have appreciated and perhaps even celebrated those stories for what they were. My early work was very meta and bordered on word puzzles designed by a slam poet. Okay, I'm overstating how bad they were. The prose was strong, and that is what enticed people to read further, to trust that there was purpose and meaning there, somewhere. If a reader came ready to decipher the clues, uncover the hidden meaning, and put in the work, they were often richly rewarded. But most readers, justifiably, were more interested in an entertaining yarn. By serving up primarily a puzzle, I iced out many of my potential readers. That's on me. But my focus on theme at the expense of all else, while undeniably backwards, may not have been this great calamity I've built it up to be. I am a great storyteller in person, face to face, especially when recounting moments from my own life. Why could I spin a tale of 20 or 30 minutes long with insight and sidebars, pathos and punchlines, but those early stories would just lie there? Turns out it's pretty simple. My verbal stories have conflict, a beginning, middle, and end, and a focus on plot, character, and action. That's what makes compelling story, which is why Tim and I chose to cover those topics first. In the prior episode, Tim and I uncovered some of our opinions on theme, namely what it is to us and how we intend to use it. Of course, theme is what your story is, in big capital letters, about. That central idea, untethered to the plot or characters, that emerges from the descriptions, situations, snippets of dialogue, symbols, and all the little choices you've made throughout the narrative. I was pleasantly surprised by one assertion we made, that theme is emergent. Whether purposely planted in the narrative or simply arising in the text from our subconscious, thematic elements will always appear, like truffles in the forest. Remembering my early work, I posed the question to Tim on how early is too early to be thinking about theme in your narrative. And we settled on early is not bad, but don't worry about it in the first draft. I've already written out a thematic statement of my yet unfinished novel, which I call The Bleakness, but going forward, I plan to set aside theme entirely in my first draft and just write what I know, what I am attracted to, and what interests me in the moment. I am confident that I can come back in the editing stage and spot opportunities to shift descriptions, combine and collect symbols into motifs, and focus the attentive reader on the, as yet undiscovered, central idea. Because for the theme to work, the reader has to identify it as crucial, but subordinate. If theme is the most important element of your story, it's basically an allegory, which risks the narrative being preachy, didactic, or tedious. So when you're refining in your later drafts and you spot a scene or a lingering moment in your story that doesn't tie into your theme, remember that if you leave that moment underutilized, it saps the power of your whole story. Essentially, that missed opportunity shows the reader that there is no central idea at play, no greater significance than the plot or action. And for astute readers, that is tremendously unsatisfying. After that first draft is done, chances are good that some usable symbols will naturally arise from your unique point of view. In the editing phase, you can spot those rare treats, your symbols, and group them into motifs that support your central idea. Perhaps common objects are often reflecting light or gleaming in the sunlight. That could signify a desire for wealth, and in a larger sense, a warning against greed. Or perhaps many objects in your story provide shade, like the book blocking the sun from her face as she reads on the beach, the brim of his hat shading his eyes as he mows the lawn, etc. Perhaps you can use all these shade references to comment on the world's morality, where, for example, how your characters act under shade is dramatically different from how they act near objects that gleam. The possibilities are endless, and it is completely up to you what to emphasize. When done well, the theme does not distract the reader from the characters, action, or plot, but it does add that second level of deeper expression that is so satisfying in literature. I'm still hooked on theme. To me, if my story has no big idea, what's the point? Literature that captures universal truth about the human condition can transcend time. In my youth, it was pure ego that drove me. But now, I feel I've lived enough life to have something worth saying. Theme will always be why I write. But now I understand my reader better. I understand people better. And I'm infused with a humility and gratitude that, like a weighted blanket of calming silence, feels a lot like wisdom. See you next week. Start writing.